Hi everybody, and welcome to the Reader's Workshop mini lesson for Monday, April 20th, 2020. Today we're going to focus on our summarizing skills. When we read in nonfiction, sometimes the subjects or the topics that we're reading in are unfamiliar to us. So because they're unfamiliar, we have to sometimes pause and think about what we've read so that we understand the information being presented to us. So watch me today as we use a TrueFlix book, Life in the West, to use our summarizing skills to help understand the information about westward expansion. So we're going to go to the book, Life in the West, and we're going to go to Chapter 1, A Land of Hope. I have my Post-its, and I have my pen, and I'm ready to go. Chapter 1, A Land of Hope. In the mid-1800s, thousands of people were traveling across the United States to the west. Some were searching for gold. Others wanted to practice their religion freely. Still others hoped to own land and find a better life for their families. Their journey by covered wagon was long and hard. Many travelers did not survive the trip. The determined pioneers who did make it gradually settled the wild lands west of the Mississippi River. About 500,000 settlers traveled west on routes that included the Oregon Trail. So if I take a moment and pause and think about what information was just presented to me, I'm learning that settlers moved for better lives. They wanted to worship their religion freely, they wanted to own land, and they wanted to search for gold. The trip was hard, but they were determined to have a better life. So that's what I'm going to write down on my notes. That settlers moved west for better lives, even though the trip was hard. Okay, so I'm going to show you my notes right now. Let me bring you back over here. Okay, so here's my first note. Settlers moved, west for better lives, even though the trip was hard. And I'm going to put that right up here on my board. Back to the book. Blazing new trails. In 1803, the United States bought a large area of land west of the Mississippi River from France. This deal was called the Louisiana Purchase, and it doubled the size of the United States. President Thomas Jefferson hired Army captains Meriwether Lewis and William Clark to explore the area. Fur trappers or hunters and traders also ventured through this region. All of these explorers paved the way for others to move west. Okay, so pausing to think about the information that was presented to me, the United States purchased land. So I'm going to write that down. Purchased land, which doubled its size or made it bigger. The president sent 2 men to explore. 2. And I think he sent them to explore because it was new land and they wanted to know if people could move out there and survive. So the president sent 2 men to explore to see if people could live there successfully. Okay, so here are my notes. Once again, this is what I just read. This is what I'm understanding from that piece of information. I'm going to put it up here on my board. And I'm going to go back to the book. The Oregon Treaty. Both Great Britain and the United States wanted to own land in the West. They were each interested in the Oregon region. In 1818, the 2 countries agreed to share this area. But by 1846, thousands of American settlers were living in the region. That year, Great Britain chose to give up its claim and sign the Oregon Treaty. This agreement stated that Oregon would now belong to the United States. Okay, so at one time, the land in Oregon belonged to both Great Britain and the United States, but let me check the date, in 1846, Great Britain signed it over to the U.S. Here's my notes on how at the time the land in Oregon belonged to both Great Britain and the United States, but then they signed a treaty and Great Britain signed it over to the United States. Okay? Going back to the book. Next page. Going for the gold. A man named James Marshall was one of those Americans who moved west. In 1848, while working at Sutter's Mill, California, he discovered gold. A year later, the California gold rush was on. News of it spread quickly around the world. Thousands of people traveled to California in hopes of getting rich. They came from as far as Europe and South America. With all of these people in the West, cities, businesses, and farms grew quickly. Gold seekers called piles of dirt containing bits of gold pay dirt. Okay, I'm ready to take my notes. So gold was found in California, and everyone who wanted to find gold moved there. The cities and towns grew quickly. Okay, here are my notes. Okay, I'm going to put that up here on my board. Notice how they're only about one sentence long. The most important details from each of these chapters. What was the chapter really about? The Homestead Act. In the 1860s, the east and west coasts of America were crowded with people. Many of these people wanted more open space where they can own land. To make this possible, Congress passed the Homestead Act in 1862. For a small fee, any United States citizen could buy 160 acres of land between the Mississippi River and the Rocky Mountains. After working the land for 5 years, these settlers could legally own it. Okay. So let's read. The Homestead Act allowed settlers to kind of rent the land. Because if they had to work it for 5 years before they could legally own it, they were kind of like renting it. To rent the land, and after 5 years, they could legally own it. Kind of like a car payment. Kind of pay a little bit each month, and then after a while when you're done paying, you own the car. Okay, so let's go over here so you can see my notes. Open it up here. The Homestead Act allowed settlers to rent the land, and after 5 years, they could legally own it. Okay, so here we go. Now, I'm going to look at what they have in common. What's their common thread? And if I look at all of my notes, the settlers moving for better lives, U.S. purchasing land, which made it bigger. They got more land from Great Britain once they signed the Oregon Treaty. Gold was found, people moved there, populations grew, cities grew. And then the Homestead Act allowed settlers to own their own land. So if I look at the common thread, what they all have in common, I would say that the United States grew in both population and land mass. Okay? That would be my main idea because that's the most common thread I see through all my notes. That's what's the same. That the purchasing of land made the United States bigger, Great Britain gave them more, which allowed settlers to move out west, which allowed more people to come. So now I'm going to write the details down. I'm going to write down that the U.S. purchased land from France which made it bigger, made the United States bigger. They also received more land when Great Britain signed over the Oregon Territory. Okay? Continuing on, I'm going to say the population also grew because gold was found in California and people immigrated as far from Europe and South America in order to find gold. And the Homestead Act allowed more settlers to buy land, which meant more people moved out west to be farmers. So you can see the full summary on your worksheet for today's work on the Reader's Workshop tab for today. And now your assignment today is to continue reading Chapter 2. I'm going to come over here and show you. A Place for All People. I want you to stop and pause after each chunk and think about one sentence that can fully sum up what you read to help you understand the information that's being presented. And then you're going to find what's common in all that information, all those notes, what's the common thread, and create a main idea, and then summarize the paragraph, just like we did here today in the video. If you have any questions, rewatch the video. Take a moment, watch it again, and if you still have questions, then email me, and I'll try to help you out. Keep up the good work, and have a good day.